I'm Julia Fisher, and on the Olive Tree today, we're continuing with hearing Lisa Loden's story. With a Russian Jewish background, Lisa was born in America into an intellectual family. As she grew up, her interest in world religions grew, and she was on a quest for truth. She eventually decided that the best way to pursue this search was to live life as a hermit. Lisa continues.
I just had a friend at that time whose mother had a lot of property in a wilderness area, and we went to meet her. I wanted to just be alone with my books and be alone in nature. And so she offered me rent-free a cabin in the woods. So I moved into the cabin in the woods, and with my books, with my long walks in nature, with my deep meditation and prayer. So yes, I did become a hermit.
What did your family think about you?
Well, my mother always thought I was a bit strange because she was very different from me. We had different temperament, just I was doing something else. I mean, something new, a new thing for me. I don't think she ever really saw until later that the passion that was driving me, which was quite clear, at least for me. But she was living a normal bourgeois life.
Did you think that you would just be there for a short time, or did you just know that you were going to be there indefinitely?
Well, in order to support myself, because my father had died when he was still in the U.S. military, officially I was a war orphan, so I could apply for tuition. So while I was a hermit, I also went to university. It was a community college, actually, and I studied humanities and received a scholarship and also a stipend on which to live.
Now, it's at that point that I think you were living fairly near to a gas station, as you would call it, a petrol station, we would call it here. And you used to go there occasionally and get a burger, I believe. And it's at that point that you met your husband, who was traveling. I mean, it's a bizarre story, isn't it? It really, you couldn't make it up.
No, I think it was one day when I was coming back from school, because I also hitchhiked my way, and where I was living was basically 4 miles from the main road, so I either had to hike out or cross the river. It was bounded on one side by the river and 4 miles from the road.
Nothing easy about this, was there?
Yeah. No, not really, but I loved it. I really did. What can I say? I'm basically quite an introvert who's learned to function fairly well as an extrovert in life. So I had come home from.
So David rolled up at this cafe and interrupted your studies.
Yeah, I mean, I was sitting at another table, and these two really interesting-looking men came into the cafe, and because I hitchhiked my way home with people, I went to their table and I said, "Which way are you going?" And in the end, they decided they would go my way. So they drove me home to this cabin in the woods 4 miles off the main road.
And that was the beginning of this very, very long relationship that you have enjoyed for many, many years.
Yes. We've been married 51 years now.
Wow. But David left you there, but it came back a year later, is that right?
Well, he left basically in the summer. This was in the summer. I don't actually remember. It wasn't a year, but it was maybe 6 months, something like that. So it wasn't summer. He came back in August. No, he was sorry, I'm getting the dates wrong here. I think he was there, yes, in summer. It was July or August, and he came back in December
Mm-hmm.
because he was on break from his position. It was a winter break in New York,
Mm.
and he came back to Washington, where I was, and that's where we decided we wanted to be strongly committed to one another. So we got a marriage license, and we're married. He came on the 1st of December after having spent less than 24 hours with me, and we were married officially on the 19th of December, 1968.
Now, did you feel that David had interrupted your lifestyle, Lisa? I mean, you obviously were prepared to get married, but it was a huge change in your thinking.
Julie, all I can say is that from the first, shall I say, minutes or hours that I met David, I knew with a certainty in my heart that this was God's man for my life. It was a sense of destiny. That's all I can say. It wasn't mad, passionate anything. It was a deep, settled knowledge that this was the man for my life. So when he came back, I mean, he wrote to me a few times, and that's another very funny part of the story.
Mm.
When he came back, it was just he had the same sense. And we'd both
So you're,
lived lives that we'd had relationships in the past, and we didn't want anything transitory. We wanted to commit ourselves to one another. And we understood the value and the purpose of commitment at that point.
you're also describing a sense of having a deep sense of destiny.
I can't describe it any other way. It was just the
Mm.
knowledge that this was the man who was meant to be the love of my life, my destiny, my future.
Well, David started working in a local logging mill, didn't he? I mean, he gave up a life in New York in the band. He was a classical musician.
Well, he had a successful career. He was in technical theater in New York, production
Mm.
supervisor for a very well-known, very excellent ballet company. And it wasn't just music. It was everything that had to do with theater and production, everything from lighting design to sets. He was responsible for everything that happened on the stage. And he was one, he said, at that point, of 5 people in New York who could run an entire show by reading the score.
Mm.
So, yes, he gave that up.
He gave that up. You got married, and that's when both of your lives really took a change. Somebody
Yes.
called Merle and a Christian entered your lives. You were a little bit suspicious, though, weren't you, Lisa, at first,
I
of this
was very
Christian man?
suspicious, not just a little bit, because David began spending a lot of time with him. Rather than coming straight home from work, he would sit and talk with this man in his office. And he was a very unusual individual in that he had no aspirations really to travel, or he was a simple person, but very wise and very caring and very loving. He hired people like David. He hired hippies because that's really, I mean, that's who we were at that time. We were part of that movement. And in this particular area, I mean, it was really a wilderness area where isolated, uh, not close to any major center of population. And the people who lived there were quite conservative. Those Christians there were very fundamentalist Christians in the main, uh, logging community, uh, and they did not like having the hippies come and invade their woods and live in their midst. But this man was different. He not only related to hippies as if we were really people. He related to us with honor and respect. He hired hippies in the mill where he was the manager. So he was continually patient, caring, considerate, and a very good manager. And this really spoke to David. So David wanted to talk with him and find out who he was and why was he the way he was. And of course, he was waiting for this, for someone to say, what do you have that I don't have? And that was basically the heart of David's questioning. I don't have what you have. I see something in you that I don't have myself. What is it? And so he began to share Jesus, Yeshua, with him. And this threatened my whole system of religious synthesis, because I decided, in my teens that Jesus did not fit. Christianity did not fit in any of the synthesis of religion on it. It didn't fit on its own terms because it claimed to be the only way. And I could integrate everything and harmonize everything together. But Jesus claimed that he is the only way to the Father, that he is the only begotten Son. Refused to fit in my system.
You've been listening to Lisa Loden, and we'll hear more from Lisa on next week's programme and how her life was about to change in a rather radical way. The Olive Tree Reconciliation Fund is a Christian charity based in the UK that supports the needs of both Jewish believers and Arab or Palestinian Christians living in Israel and the wider Middle East. If you'd like to know more about our work and receive our free bi-monthly newsletter, please visit our website, olivetreefund.org. Meanwhile, join me at the same time next week for another story from the Olive Tree. Until then, goodbye.